Hey everybody, welcome to our final lesson in our very first unit of 30-2, rational equation applications, or word problems, some people like to call them. Okay, so what we're going to work on today is these applications of all of the things that we've been playing around with for the last couple of weeks. Most of the time, these will be equations. And we haven't played around with it too much, but we'll definitely have to use the quadratic formula today. So we'll go through that nice and slow, but let me know if you've got questions. Maybe I'll make a different video just for some practice on that. So here we go. A billboard is being made using the dimensions of the golden rectangle. Feel free to go and Google up the golden rectangle. It's super cool. So it says the billboard's going to have a length of 15 meters, and we need to determine, so that means show me that work again, that's a math directing word, the width. Okay, so I've got a formula here, and it says my length is 15. So I'm going to go and plop 15 in for the length, and I'm trying to find the width, so W stuff. Okay, I've got an equation here. So I'm going to go back to what I did in my last lesson. I'm going to say to myself, first off, anything to factor? Nothing. Step 2, non-permissible values. Well, I see that W can't be 0 and W can't definitely be 15. Okay, that's good. Now I'm going to find my common denominator. So again, my common denominator is one of everything I see. So on the left-hand side, I'm going to multiply by 15 minus W. And on the right-hand side, I'm going to multiply by W over W. And now remember last week or last lesson maybe, once I have a common denominator in an equation, the left-hand side is equal to the right-hand side. Therefore, the numerators are equal to each other. So I'm just going to rewrite what I have here. There we go. Now, what I'm looking at here is starting to look like a trinomial. So I'm going to distribute everything through. I'm going to move everything to the right-hand side because W squared is positive over there. Okay, just like that. And so now I say to myself, okay, look at this thing. This is a trinomial. This is something that I should be able to factor. So to factor this thing, again, I'm saying I need two numbers that multiply to negative 225 and add to 15. Okay, take a second, think about those numbers. Two numbers that multiply to negative 225 and add to 15. And tell me if you can figure them out. Okay, were you able to come up with two numbers that multiply to negative 225 and add to 15? Probably not. So when that happens, this is where we're going to use the quadratic formula. Now, the quadratic formula is the first thing on my formula sheet, and you've played around with it before, but we'll go slow through this. So my quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So what I'm going to say here is when I'm going to sub in my values, a is 1, right? If I don't see a coefficient there, b is 15, c is negative 225. Now, what usually, if anything goes wrong here, it's just subbing values into my calculator. I'm just going to draw a line here so it's nice and delineated for you. Okay, I'm going to start subbing these values in. So x is equal to negative b, so b is positive 15, so negative 15 plus or minus. Okay, here's where I start seeing mistakes going into calculators. Right here. B squared. I'm always going to put that in parentheses. The reason why I'm going to do that is if that was a negative number and you didn't have those parentheses there, your calculator is going to give you the wrong answer. And 2 times A, well, that's just 2. Now, what I would prefer you to do is to not just ram that thing in your calculator. This is where mistakes start happening. Okay, what I'm going to get you to do is put what's underneath your radical, also known as the discriminant, into your calculator first. Simplify it down. Simplify it down before you start putting everything in your calculator. So that's what I was doing there. I like it. Okay, so from here now, what you get is 2 different answers. You get the positive portion, and you get the negative portion. Maybe I'll do the negative portion in pretty pink. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go put these 2 things into my calculator. So the first one, what I'm going to do is I'm being really careful. I'm going to put my numerator in my calculator and then hit enter. Otherwise, I need to put brackets around that. I get 9 point, rounded to the nearest 10th, 9.3. If I go to put the second possibility into my calculator, I'm going to end up with negative 24.3. Now, thinking about what this question was asking me, it was asking me to find the width. This doesn't make sense. That's a negative width. It doesn't make sense. That is extraneous. So the width that I'm looking for, 9.3. Wouldn't hurt to write a sentence either, right at the end, but for certain, box my answer. So if you're struggling a little bit with the quadratic formula, what I need you to do is just to go back and try to put that in your calculator nice and slow. I'll make another video to help show some of the steps, just in case you're struggling with it. Okay, but it's a big skill. Okay, let's try a couple more of these things. All right, now maybe some of you remember this question from grade 11. 2 cyclists are having a race. Cyclist 2 is 5 times faster than cyclist 1. Okay, not much of a race, eh? The route they take is 100 kilometers long, and cyclist 2 arrives 2 hours earlier. Okay, so it says complete the chart and write the equation. Gotcha. So I'm going to go through. They both are going 100 kilometers an hour, or 100 kilometers total. Cyclist 2 is clearly on a motorbike or something. He's whooping cyclist 1. He's going 5 times as fast. Okay, here comes the important part. Our equation that we're always going to work with is always going to come from time. So what I really need you to remember is time is distance divided by speed. Time is distance divided by speed. So 100 over x and 100 over 5x. It'll always be that way. Time is distance divided by speed. Now, the last thing we haven't used is we need to make an equation here. And it says cyclist 2 arrives 2 hours earlier than cyclist 1. Okay, this is what I do when I do these questions, because I always have a bit of a problem with it. So off to the side here, I'm just going to make up an example. And I'm just going to say that, I'm just going to pretend it took cyclist 2 10 hours. Just random, I'm just making that up. So if he finishes 2 hours earlier than cyclist 1, it would have taken cyclist 1 12 hours. Okay, but I'm making an equation, meaning I need to make these 2 things equal to each other. Well, there's a couple of ways I could make these equal to each other. I could add 2 to the 10 hours. 10 plus 2 is 12. That would be an equation. Okay, I'm going to write that out for the question. 100 over x, cyclist 1, their time is equal to the time of cyclist 2 plus 2 hours. There's one equation. But I could make another equation. Instead of adding 2 to the faster person, I could have subtracted 2 hours from the slower person. So here's another equation I could have made. Do you notice it's just a rearrangement of the first one I made? So we always need to make an equation with these things. How, again, I like to do it is just to make up random hours first, and then use it with all my variables. Okay. So there's your two common looking equations for that one. There's definitely more, but those are your two very common ones. Last question says, would there be any restrictions? Well, I know I've got non-permissible value. I know my non-permissible value is x can't be 0. It's a speed. I got to be going some rate. But my restrictions, I'm going to say my restriction is x is greater than 0. If x is less than 0, well, that doesn't really make sense in terms of a speed. I have to be going greater than 0. So any answer I get that's 0 or smaller won't make sense. So a restriction typically has an inequality in it. It's telling me my domain that I'm working with. Okay, there's our first distance speed time question. Notice all it did, or it asked us, was to find the equation. So on my diploma, I'm going to get two types of questions. I'm going to get one where I simply have to make the equation. Done. Easy mark. The next type of question I'm going to get, they will give me the equation and I will have to solve it. Now on this one here, number 3, give it a quick read. I'm going to ask you to do both. Okay, but I need you to know on the diploma, it'll be one or the other, not both. So we got Melanie is driving 404 kilometers from Edmonton to Banff in the same length of time as her friend Heidi to drive from Edmonton to Jasper. Melanie is driving 10 kilometers an hour faster than Heidi. So I'm going to go and look at my table here. Okay, there's my distances. Okay, so what it said was, here's Melanie's speed, and they said Heidi's actually going 10 slower. So they switched it up a little bit when they typed up the table. No big deal. Time is distance over speed. Time is distance over speed. Okay, looking good. So first question I'm going to get on my diploma is simply, can I make the equation? So remember my equation, our equation is always going to come from time. So I always have to go back up to the question. It says something about the time, the same amount of time. Well, that means these two things are equal. There's our equation. I like it. Okay, so let's go and solve this thing. So common denominator. So the left-hand side needs x minus 10 over x minus 10. And the right-hand side needs x over x. It's an equation, it's equal, the denominators are the same, therefore the numerators are the same. Okay, I'm going to distribute in my 404, remove my parentheses. I start to get a little bit of large numbers. Don't be surprised, that's going to happen. Come up here. I'm going to bring all my x's to the left-hand side. So that'll be 40x equals 40. And divide both by 40. And what's that going to be? 101, I believe. I haven't had enough coffee this morning, so just in case. All right, I'm good at math. 101. Now, on tests and on the diploma, what I see all the time is people just go, bam. They say, yep, there's my answer, x. It's math's greatest question, right? Find x. And they just go, yeah, I'm done. Booyah. Let's go to the next question. And then they get their test back and they get 1 out of 3. And then they come and yell at me. And I'll be like, dude, did you answer the question? Answer. No, I did not answer the question. Determine whose speed? Heidi's speed. Right there. This is Melanie's speed. So what's Heidi's speed? Heidi then is going to be going 10 kilometers slower. So Heidi's speed is 91 kilometers per hour. Okay, it sounds silly, but I actually need you asking yourself, did I answer the question? You would be amazed. I'm up in Edmonton marking these diplomas crying how many kids don't actually answer the question. Last year's diploma asked to find both speeds. So if you found just one of the speeds correctly, you got 1.5 out of 2. I need you to find both speeds for full marks. So be careful. Make sure you're actually answering the question. Okay, then it asks me to state any restrictions on x. Well, I know that x has to be greater than 10. Why? Well, if Heidi's going 10 kilometers an hour slower than Melanie, Melanie has to be going a little bit faster than 10 at the minimum, right? So there is my restriction. Now do me a favor when you do these distance, speed, time questions, make sure your answer actually makes sense. Melanie's driving down a highway. She's going 101 kilometers an hour. Does that make sense? Yeah. If anything, maybe she's going a tiny bit slow, but yeah, it's reasonable. There's always some kid in the class who tells me, you know, Melanie's going, I don't know, 536 kilometers an hour. Okay. Yeah, probably not bloody likely, hey? What is she doing? What's she got? She's from Back to the Future and is driving a DeLorean down the highway? I don't think so. Okay, think of your answer. When I actually help write these questions for the diploma, I can't have a speed that doesn't make sense or is even illegal for that matter. Okay, so I can't even give you a speed where you're going 150 kilometers an hour. You are really, really speeding. I can't do that. So make sure, ask yourself, did I answer the question? And does my answer to the question actually make a little bit of sense? Or does it give me an answer that you're just like, whoa, yeah, no, I'm not going 500 kilometers down the highway. If I am, well, maybe good for you, but you probably shouldn't be doing that. Okay, let's try another one. Distance, speed, time, by the way, is the go-to question for sure for most teachers in 30-2. So you need to practice those the most. But the next question shows us it's not always about distance, speed, time. So Steve bought a case of vintage hockey cards. Oh, I see someone's changed my question here. Steve bought a case of vintage hockey cards for 450 bucks. He kept 2 for himself and sold the rest, making a profit of $10 for each hockey card. Okay, determine the number of hockey cards in the case. Okay, so we're really solving for V. So notice here how they gave us the actual question. The equation, I should say, not the question. They always give us the question. Come on. Like I said, not enough coffee. They gave us the equation. Okay, so here's what we need to do. We just need to solve this equation. So remember, determine means you got to show me some work, right? You got to show me what you're trying to do to solve this question. If you're not showing me any work, what I'm guessing is that you just rammed this thing in your calculator and have just done it graphically, right? So that's not going to help me. Okay, I'm just going to rewrite this here, so I've got just a little bit more room. Okay. So common denominator is going to be v minus 2. So the first guy needs to be multiplied by v over v minus 2 over v minus 2. And don't forget the right-hand side. I see that quite often. You need a common denominator for the whole thing. Good. So now, equation, denominators are the same, therefore the numerators are equal. Okay, little nasty looking, so you just need to take your time, slowly distribute, remove all your parentheses. 10v squared minus 20v. I'm going to move everything to the right-hand side because my 10v squareds are actually positive there. So I'm going to move everything to that side, but I'm going to go slow here. What I find a lot of mistakes that occur, and I'm just as guilty of that, is going a little too fast. Actually, that's something I'm very guilty of, is going too fast. I try to skip steps. So I'm just going to go a little slow, simplify, move everything over. There's my quadratic. I notice I can actually divide everything by 10. I'm allowed to do that because I'm dividing both sides by 10. So I'm just changing how it looks, not what it's equal to. Okay, so now I've got this nice, or at least nicer looking quadratic equation. Okay, so it's two numbers that multiply to negative 90 and add to negative 13. Okay, I'm going to hit pause on the video. You're going to take a minute and see if you can think of those two numbers. It's the factoring that gets in people's way. So take a moment, try to find those numbers. Okay, I'm hoping that you were able to figure out the numbers. They are 18 and 5. Negative 18, I should say, and positive 5. And so the number of vintage hockey cards I solve, therefore, well, V negative 5, I don't think he's buying a box of hockey cards that has negative hockey cards in it. I think he's getting ripped off. There it is. Now, while I'm here, I'm going to say, what are my restrictions? Well, V has to be greater than, I don't know if I'm going to say equal to, I'm just going to say has to be greater than 2 because he's taking 2 out of the case. And so looking at my equation right there, there has to be at least 2 in the case. Okay, so again, it's not always distance beat time. Sometimes it is other applications. Now, if you struggle finding those two numbers there, using the looking at the quadratic, you could have always used the quadratic formula. Okay, remember the quadratic formula always is going to give you your answer. So if you didn't find those factors, that's okay. I want you practicing the quadratic formula. That's always a good skill to have in your back pocket. Okay, let's try one more of these. Last one. Laurel and Hardy are delivering some papers. And again, here we go. It's a bit of a distance beat time question, kind of. They're figuring out how long something takes and they're working together. So notice again, they give me the equation. Okay, and so it says determine the time it takes either of them to deliver the papers by themselves. So that means we're going to find the speeds of both of them. I'm not just going to solve for t. I'm going to find the speeds of both. Okay, common denominator is 42t, t minus 3. So the first term here gets multiplied by 42t minus 13. The second term gets multiplied by 42t. And don't forget the right-hand side, just like that. Therefore, I can work with just the numerators. You can hear me say it way too much. And here we go. So we're going to start getting some large numbers here. So definitely going to need a calculator. So I'm going to get 42t minus 546 plus 42t is equal to t squared minus 13t. Okay, I'm going to bring everything to the right-hand side. So this will be t squared, negative 13 minus 42 minus 42, so minus 84. So negative 97t plus 546. Okay, there's our quadratic we're going to work with. Now, there's two reasons why I'm not going to try to factor this thing. Reason one, you know, two numbers that multiply to 546 and add to negative 97, that doesn't sound like fun. Here's the other reason. Back up here in the question, it says to the nearest minute. Okay, that's my hint that they're actually going to not be integers and that I'm going to have to round this thing, which is probably a hint that I'm going to use the quadratic formula. So I'm just going to go straight to the quadratic formula, and I could be wrong. Okay, I'm wrong a lot. You guys know that, but that's, I think, a pretty solid guess. So again, A is 1, B is negative 97, C is 546. Now I apologize, I'm running out of room, so I'm going to write my quadratic formula off here. like that. Okay, so negative b, so negative and a negative make it a positive. Again, I'm going to always put my b term in parentheses because if I'm just ramming that straight in my calculator, I need that, or else when your calculator squares it, it will think that something squared is a negative, and we know something squared is always going to be a positive. Okay, so now I'm just going to slowly put this thing in my calculator. If you have a fraction button on your calculator, which some of you do depending on your calculator mode, this is the time when I'm definitely going to be using that feature, right? It's really handy to have. Okay, now I put this in my calculator and I didn't show you my step there. I get for my first one, negative 91 over 97. I'm saying to myself, wasn't expecting that. Okay, I'll go for the second one then. So I'm going to do the second part with the negative on the inside. And I get my second answer is this. Well, I say to myself, ooh, x is time in this question, or t. I wrote x. I got two negatives. Well, what does that mean? Means I screwed up somewhere, right? So this is going to happen. So when this happens, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and I'm going to say, okay, I bet you I made a mistake in my simplification. Okay, so I don't panic. I go, okay, I'm going to go all the way back to step one, and I'm going to start checking to see if I made a mistake. So my common denominator is 42t, t minus 13. So I multiplied right here by 42t minus 13. Looks good. Second one, I'm going to multiply by 42t. I like it. And my right-hand side, I'm just going to multiply by t over t minus 13. Looks good. Okay, so I'm just going to check my work there. So that should be negative 546 plus 42t is equal to t squared minus 13t. That's good. Okay, so I'm guessing I screwed up somewhere in my simplification here. So negative 13 minus 42 is negative 97t plus 546. I still don't see a mistake. So maybe I put this in my quadratic formula wrong? I don't know. Let's find out. So negative b plus or minus 97, negative 97 squared minus 4ac. Oh yeah, I know what I did right now. So I made a silly mistake. 2 times a, well, that's just 2. I'm sure when I was doing that, a bunch of you were screaming at me. You're like, what is this crazy guy doing? Okay, it happens, right? Like I said, I didn't have enough coffee in me this morning. The woodpecker woke me up, but that happens. So when I get my answer and it doesn't make sense, it's good to go back and check. Now I'm looking at this going, okay, that makes a lot more sense. My first answer is 91. And my second answer is going to be 6. Okay, I was expecting them assist in the nearest minute. I guess that is the nearest minute, 91 and 6. Okay, but those aren't my answers. Because I know back here, t minus 13, well, I know t has to be greater than 13, right? That's what that's telling me. T has to be greater than 13. That's my restriction. So in fact, I'm going to cross this off. That's extraneous. So the 2 times that I'm going to have here, this should actually even say t. So it says, what are the 2 times? Well, Hardy, that's who I just found here, Hardy, that's his time, takes 91 minutes, and Laurel takes 13 minutes less, so that sounds like 78 minutes. There we are. Okay, so as you're going through this, you are going to make mistakes. I just made one. It happens. The key part is when you do make that mistake, what I want you to think about is, okay, I got to go back. I know I've screwed up. Let's go hunt for my mistake. Where did I screw this thing up? Okay, it's going to happen. I did not do that on purpose, honestly. Okay, my friends, there's the last section in our first unit. It's going to take some time. These questions are difficult, so this homework's going to take you a little bit longer. So take your time going through this, and I will post up another video about the quadratic formula if you need some help with it. Take care.